You're a writer. When you come across inspiring or helpful information, how do you remember it? How do you mark it so you can refer? Our writer today here on Writer Talks has a phenomenal method that she's going to share with you. Whoops. When you come across inspiring or helpful. That was an echo. Melanie Jones is here with us today on Writer Talks to share a brilliant idea that she uses to guide her writing and inform her in the midst of the process. So, welcome to Writer Talks. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and here at Two Sisters Writing and Publishing, we have monthly writing contests and we interview our winners here on Writer Talks. And today, live from Chicago, is Melanie Jones with her winning story, Coach, which she's going to read to us in a little while. But first, Melanie, I want to hear all about that amazing way that you mark content that can help you. So, first, welcome to Writer Talks.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm thrilled that you're here because what you shared with me is something I've never heard. Can you talk about what it is you do to mark that information?
Yeah, so something I started doing about 2 years ago is I started highlighting descriptions, or even if it was just transitioning in time or flashbacks or describing settings. I started highlighting those in a Kindle, and I know for shame it should all be a book, but this has really helped me organization wise. So I started highlighting those things. And then at the end of the book, I would export the whole parts that I've highlighted, all those sections. And then I would go through each highlighted section and I would put in a Word document that I created. Whatever it fell under. So if it was a really smart way to seamlessly go into a flashback, and I was like, wow, that was really smart when I read it, I would highlight it. So then I have a whole section, I refer to it as my writer's Bible. I have a whole section that's just flashbacks. So I will put all of these different ways that people did a flashback, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I don't have to be so clunky with the narrative or what have
Uh-huh.
you. And then
Uh-huh.
even like unique character descriptions, or describing, I don't even know what else, even words that I just like, or that I would never think to normally use. I'll highlight them, and then I put them all under these different headers, and then I can just jump from header to header if I'm struggling in a moment where I'm trying to transition into, you know, 10 days later or something like that. I'll use those as ways to kind of guide me into a better way of doing it.
I love it. I love it. And you call it your
Good.
writer's
I love it.
Bible. Does it save you time because you don't have to go look for stuff? It's like all compiled right there.
Yeah, it does save me time. And I also feel like it's made me a better reader, because then as I'm reading these things, I'm really focused in on it and paying even better attention, because I'm looking for, smart tools. Why reinvent the wheel if I don't have to, and for certain parts of a novel.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So tell us all the things that you like to write. Your short story obviously is a short story and it's a winner, but what else are you writing?
Uh, so I am working on a novel right now, and just as a general, I try to focus on things that are kind of like universal experiences. So opposed to an ordinary person being in an extraordinary circumstance, I try to focus on an extraordinary person in an ordinary circumstance. I think
Oh.
that that's what has always kind of engaged me the most when I'm reading, is like reading something that I've experienced or I know someone has experienced, and
Mhm.
then seeing what that person's reaction is. So I find like the variation of reactions to be what's really intriguing to me, like the psychology of why a person responds to something the way that they might.
Mhm. I love that. I love that you said that's a major theme that you like to write about. What is it that you like to write about? What is it about that you like?
I think psychology is very, very intriguing to me. So just understanding, or even trying to understand why, five different people will react totally differently to one thing.
Hmm.
And then another thing I normally write about is strong women or women issues in, mostly contemporary times, being a woman in contemporary time. It kind of is not a nice way to outlet emotions, but to write something that other people read and makes them nod their head and feel what I'm talking about by writing that out.
Yes, that's so powerful. What do you think is the trick to resonating with your readers like that?
I don't know if there is a trick. If I had the trick, I probably would have a published novel by now. But I mean, I think what I try to do at least is write things that are painfully truthful to me. And if that is something that resonates with people, then so be it. But I think when you are writing your best, you're normally writing your truths. So,
Which is really difficult. So, how do you find the courage to do that?
ooh, probably just the women around me who have been open. The piece that I'm going to read, I actually wrote it after having a conversation with a friend of mine who was speaking about a coach that she had that was inappropriate with some of her teammates. And it reminded me of similar experiences that I had growing up in sports as well, but I never talked about with anybody. So allowing other women's stories and the things that they share, allowing those things to inspire me to speak those truths of the experiences that I've also had or seen other women have.
I love it. That's powerful, powerful. So, Melanie, do you journal?
No, I don't really journal. By journal, the closest thing I come to journaling is half written stories.
I have written stories.
Yes. I'm always like, that would be a really good idea. And I start writing a story. And then I'm like, oh, I don't have a plot here. And then I just.
Well, you do have a great, fully written winning story at our website. Everybody go over to twosisterswriting.com, winning stories, and read Coach by Melanie Jones. And if you don't, she's going to read it for us now. Melanie, can you read it for us, please?
Yes. Okay.
Yay.
The story is entitled Coach. My middle school basketball coach, the one that asked me to meet him after practice, the one that pushed my hair behind my ear, the one that told me I was talented, then pressed his 36-year-old lips to my 12-year-old lips, was now sitting next to me on a packed flight to LA. He smiled at me, wrinkles forming at the corner of his eyes, but those very eyes lacked the slight spark a person has when they recognize someone. Because of him, I quit basketball. I told my parents it was because I didn't like the other girls. I said they were too cliquey. My parents were baffled because I'd always loved to play. They fought with me, trying to get me to stay on the team. They asked me what was really going on. I stuck to my lie like a gnat to flypaper. Packed flight, he says to me. I nod. I wait for it to dawn on him suddenly, like a punch in the gut. Do you remember me? I ask. He looks at me. His attention might erase me entirely. His eyes widen. Heather, he says. No. Monica, I respond. He shakes his head. Sorry, Monica, I don't remember you, he says. He puts his headphones in and closes his eyes.
Oh my gosh. Yuck.
Yes.
That is such a unfortunately common thing. So, wow, that is so powerful and gross.
Yeah.
Ew. And also why we don't tell our parents when stuff happens to us. I did the same. Something happened to me when I was 5 and I didn't tell them till I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
And it was traumatic for me, but I don't know why that happens, but that's very, very powerful. So when you write something that packs such a powerful punch in the gut, what's your goal? Is it to broaden awareness? Is it to just get a reaction? Is it just to be interesting? Or do you hope that it can inspire some kind of changes in behavior?
I think a change in behavior would have to, there would have to be a lot more than, you know, words on a page. Unfortunately, it would have to be a whole system rehaul. I think when I write something like this, I'm actually more imagining a person who had a similar or exact experience reading this and feeling some sort of support over it. Um, I think specifically in this scenario, and I mean, even in these recent times, there's been so much more coming to light, even in professional women's sports with the NWSL recently, Simone Biles, Larry Nasser, all of those types of things. It's so common. And I think one of the issues is the idea of like who deserves protection in these scenarios. So that's one of the things I was thinking about in writing this, like that the narrator of this story never said anything and was essentially protecting the coach. And I think what is important in some pieces is not the questions that are specifically presented, but the unasked questions of like why not tell the parents, and what does it mean that he doesn't even remember this person, that he thinks she's someone else. Who was that
Right.
someone else? Did he do the
Yeah.
same thing?
Yeah.
And uh, in a lot of these circumstances as well, I think people who are predators, it's not like a one-time thing, which a lot of people assume. It's often repeated behavior. So that's what I was trying to get at the end of it.
Oh, that's powerful. What kind of feedback have you gotten on this story?
Um, Mostly that I try to address, hopefully successfully, that I address a lot of unspoken issues within a short piece.
You do. It's very short, and it really, you do. You absolutely do. So many. Wow. So just is that reflective of the other things that you write? Do you typically have this type of theme?
I think the only theme that I have throughout my writing that like is goes through all of it is I always have strong female or women leads as either the narrator or the main character. That's really the only thing that's always the commonality of these pieces. And it's normally someone who has some type of inner struggle. Like one of the other stories that I recently wrote and actually did a reading a few weeks ago was about a woman who is struggling with the death of her father, and she knows that she wasn't her father's favorite, and her sisters seem okay, but she's not okay, and she resents how okay they are when she knows that they were more loved than she was.
Right.
And then even my main character in my novel, who she's struggling with mental health issues, and she's also very smart, so she's trying to talk herself out of needing help, even though she knows that she needs it. And it's not even like a matter of it being stigmatized. It's more that she doesn't want to admit that she needs the help. She'd rather just try to figure it out herself.
Wow, that's powerful. Wow. So, Melanie, can you talk about you have a day job? So, when do you write and how do you write? Like evenings, mornings, weekends, lunchtime? How do you do that?
So I have a little writers group that we all meet on Zoom, and we'll just like turn our cameras off and and mute ourselves, and we'll write for a while, and then we'll check in an hour. So I meet with a group normally about 2 hours every week.
Uh-huh.
And then aside from that, and that's like kind of the more like accountability side of things, is having other friends that are also doing that. So that way you can say, okay, I was working on this earlier in the week. It's not like anybody's pressuring you, but you want to look like you're at least being progressing. And then aside from that, I try to spend every lunch that I have working on something, whether or not that's my novel, or if that's reading, or if that's working on a short story, just something. So that way you know, I feel like working on a novel, it can get like, the best example I can think of is like if you've had the same thing for dinner every single day of the week and you're tired of eating the same thing, it can feel sort of like that. So if I'm tired of working on a novel and I just kind of want to move away from it, then maybe I'm working on a short story, or maybe I'm even just going on some of like the great like online literary magazines and reading other people's work, just something that keeps me connected to writing. I do that basically every lunch break that I have.
I love it. That's awesome. It's so important to read as a writer. Can you talk about
Mm.
how reading good writing helps you as a writer?
There's so many times that I'm reading something and I'm like, oh, that was so smart. Like, and then I just, to get back to the writing Bible
Yeah.
thing, I just like highlighted. I'm like, why didn't I just say that way?
Uh-huh.
It's just, it's like it feels almost like you're, cheating in a way, because I, I think that when you're writing a novel and then you're also reading, like you're basically giving yourself answers of ways to like do things better. So even now I'm in the second round of editing my novel, and I'm actually reading Dune right now. Um, but there's a lot of like flashbacks and a lot of transitions. And right now, it's helpful to read I just started reading that novel, and right now I'm editing the opening of my novel. So it's been helpful to see, when they summarize something versus when they really expound on certain things. So it's just been helpful about pacing even. So I think most writers, they can feel sometimes when something they've written is off, and especially pacing, like it's like, okay, my pacing's off, but I can't figure out exactly why. And even when I'm reading it now, I'm like, oh, that shouldn't be in summary, right? So it's just really helpful to be reading while you're writing, because you're using those things, even if you don't realize it, you're using those things to write, uh, in direct correlation over. It can't help but to spill over, because it's already on your mind. So, writing these really powerful, or I'm sorry, reading these really powerful stories with really successful storylines, there's a reason that it works. So why not, let it work for you?
Yeah, I think there's like osmosis that occurs. Like when you take in that intelligent content, it does something in your brain so that when you go to write, it helps you compose more effortlessly. I
I would
read the New
agree with
York
that.
Times every day and I get the same because it's very well written and like it uses words. Sometimes I have to even look up and I have a pretty good vocabulary considering I'm a
Yeah.
writer, but it's really fascinating because then I find myself like having especially transitions.
Mm,
Like it really helps you with transitions because I like to use the metaphor of sewing where the edges of the writing are like hemmed and seamless
mm,
and just so it just flows, but having those transitions just makes the writing sing. And when I read other people's work that has excellent transitions, that helps me do it. So I love what you're saying. Read more and read a diversity of things.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yes.
So Melanie, what's your big dream as a writer?
I think as a child, I thought, one successful novel and I'm gonna make it. And like that's the way that thought about I thought about it. And then the more that I meet other writers and learn more about even like the publishing process, the more that you learn that it's not like, you have one successful novel and then you're set for life. So I finished my MFA program about 2 years ago, and I still haven't really had the opportunity to reimagine what the final dream would be. I have I have a piece that the novel that I've been working on, and it's based on a friend of mine who passed away unfortunately. And I think for me, the new dream, instead of being like I'm gonna write this novel and it's gonna make me a millionaire or something, is more that I'm writing something that honors her experience and the experience of mental health, as far as my relationship with it goes. And I feel if I adhere to that, then I'm on the best path possible to be a strong writer. So
Oh,
that's it. It's just, the dream is putting the work in and knowing that I've written something that is strong, a strong piece.
oh, that's super powerful. I love it. So it's really kind of pulling back from that big picture and doing it one by one, piece by piece, and each one
Mm-hmm.
having meaning far beyond the $1 million, which would be wonderful, but it's you have to have that altruistic mission as a writer to have true success. And the feeling of fulfillment that you get from that is really immeasurable.
Yes.
So the message is meaning. Find the meaning in your writing, not just the money,
Yeah.
which
But
is
money's also
always
nice.
yes. Can you talk about a lot of writers who've come on Writer Talks talk about the importance of their writers group, Melanie? Can you talk about how they help you? Do they keep you accountable? Do they keep you inspired? Do you critique each other's work? How does that go?
I think overall, I think there's two. It's the accountability of continuing to write and update and edit, but then it's also more at least for me, it's been more about sharing in our failures of, applying to a literary journal on submittable and like, getting a rejection 2 days later and like feeling part of that and knowing that that's just the name of the game. Or even like we were part of a writing, we were part of a cohort here in Chicago called Story Studio, which is where I met them. Um, and after we got some of our edits back, some, editing can get harsh, and being able to talk and bounce those things off of each other, and finding commonalities in our pain. That's
Ah,
really what's kind of, I think that's, speaking of universal experiences, that's a universal writing experience is, you know, failure, not getting published or getting rejected. And so being able to talk about those things and the places where submitting and even reading each other's work and saying where we think that this might work well. So since we have familiarity with each other's pieces, I might like see a journal that's looking for a certain kind of piece and know that my friend has that, and I'll send that to them. And if they get in, they're excited and I'm excited. So there's that. And then as far as editing goes, um, at some point, I kind of almost feel guilty when I'm like writing all the time and I'm always asking the same people for editing help. But you know, that is also part of it. Even editing helps you understand your own processes better as well, I think. So while you may be doing them favors by editing something, you're also kind of doing a favor to yourself, because there's been times when I've edited something and then I'm like, oh, I'm definitely guilty of that.
so you all in your group edit each other's work?
Yeah, so this is mostly not the novel length items, but we're also all working on novels. But if we're writing like short stories, flash fiction, that type of thing, we'll send it to each other, and get, editing feedback. Well, I personally try to like share that among them. There's 3 or 4 of us. So if I send one to one person, I'll probably send a different person something. But also, it kind of depends on what the piece is. One of the women in the group, she more focuses on YA. So if it's something that I feel like has more of a YA tone, maybe I would send it to her. If it's something that's more about like historical fiction, I might send it to another person. So we all kind of have like our little silos of interest in writing as well.
Wow, that's fascinating. What a great group. You really have to have trust.
Mm, yes.
Trust first to share your work with anybody in the first place,
Yeah,
but to ask for their feedback because not everybody has your best interest in heart at heart. So,
that's true.
yeah, you're really fortunate that you've connected with this group.
Mm-hmm,
How
definitely.
many?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, it actually reminds me of, there's a mantra for running, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a group. I think it's something like that. And
Uh-huh.
it kind of like novel, everyone's always like, a novel is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So having a writer's group kind of reminds me of that.
Well, that's really cool. I love it. If you want to go fast, run alone. If you want to go far, run with a group.
Hmm.
Wow, that's so interesting. All right, so we have 4 minutes left, Melanie. Is there any tips you'd like to share with other writers before we go?
Tips. Hmm. Hmm. I mean, I think you probably can't feel like a real writer until a piece has been rejected 7 times and then randomly accepted. So,
That's a real uplifting.
but my point is that
But
it gets accepted eventually, and everybody gets rejected. I think that because of the cinematic approach to like writers and the way that it's romanticized and everything, even in like TV shows about writers, people think that it's just like suddenly that there's a spark, and then you just are writing and writing, and it's like this fervent thing, and you can't sleep, and you're sweating, and all of this stuff, and then it's accepted and it's brilliant and all of that. And it's not really, at least in my experience, it's not really like that. It's been more like I first build a house of straw, and then I realized I could build something stronger. But I need to build that house of straw first to see what that's going to look like before I tear it down and rebuild it in brick. And then someone wants to buy it or publish it
wow,
in
love
this case.
it. That's
So
awesome.
I just think that if I have, I mean, I don't think that I'm really accomplished enough to really give great writer's advice, but
Oh, that
if
was awesome though.
well, thank you. But as far as I'm concerned, it's more like if something is not getting accepted, if it's not succeeding, it doesn't mean you necessarily have a bad story. It might get accepted someplace else and you
Hmm.
just haven't found the right fit. Or
Hmm.
maybe there's something small that you can change that'll make a big difference and you just don't see it yet, but you will.
I love it. I love it. Your piece of what you just said about rejection is so real. And the rejection of short story writers is the reason that inspired Catherine to say, whenever I have an opportunity to help writers, celebrate writers, showcase writers, publish writers, I'm going to do it. So when we started our company 5 years ago, her experience of getting so many rejection letters, submitting to magazines and such. That's why we started our contest. And you're here as a celebration of that, that we recognize, we celebrate, and we showcase writers. And your story will be published in our international anthologies. And we're just super proud of writers like you, Melanie, who are doing the thing and and not
Well,
giving up.
I really love what you said about the celebrations thing, because that's also, I guess, if I had another piece of advice, it's to like really celebrate other writers um, and their successes, because if you ever expect someone to celebrate you have to celebrate other people. And I think sometimes in writing and in anything competitive, it's easy to fall victim to some levels of maybe jealousy or something like that. And while that's normal and kind of speaks to your own, desire to succeed, there's enough pieces of pie for everybody. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
is a good way to put
Mm-hmm.
it, and that you really should be excited for your cohort members or for your
Mm-hmm.
friends who are also writers, and
Mm-hmm.
supporting them and being happy for them,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all, we all have similar goals, and we should all be celebrating and supporting. Celebrating is a form of support, and we all need to be supported.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love it. I love it, Melanie. Well, I am so grateful that you took time to be a guest here on Writer Talks and that you read your powerful story, Coach. So everybody go to twosisterswriting.com and look up Melanie Jones's piece, Coach, and read it again because it really packed a powerful punch for me. Um,
Thank you.
so thank you for joining us, Melanie, and I wish you
Thank
the
you.
absolute best with your writing.
Thank you. And thank you for having me and for publishing and accepting my piece. I
You're
appreciate it so much.
it's our honor and pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, all of you, for joining us here on Writer Talks, where you got to hear Melanie Jones read her story, Coach, her winning story that will be published in the international anthologies of writers who win a contest here at Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. And she shared her powerful tip about creating a writer's Bible where you mark all the inspiring passages that are in different categories that can help you refer back when you're writing to improve your own work. So, would love it if you could give us a thumbs up for the show, subscribe to the channel, drop us a comment if you have anything to say or any questions to ask. You can also please follow me on Twitter at Elizabeth Atkins or at the number two, Sisters Writing. So, catch us back here every Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern Time to watch Writer Talks and meet yet another inspiring author who won the writing short the short story contest here at Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. So, in the meantime, I wish you happy writing, and we'll see you